2020. The Harris campaign said Trump is laying the groundwork for another stolen election claim if he loses. The Republican nominee suggested that divine intervention in next week's election would reveal him as the rightful winner of even Democratic bastions like California. He said, and I quote, "If we could bring God down from heaven and he would be the vote counter, we would win this, we would win California, we would win a lot of states. You have just got to keep the votes honest." Is Trump all over again creating a threat to the election and claiming that it will be a free and fair election only if he wins? And if he loses, that would mean it was a rigged election? Is he once again trying to poison public confidence in the US presidential election? While speaking in New Mexico, Trump falsely claimed that he had actually won the state in 2016 and 2020. In reality, Trump lost New Mexico twice by 8 and 11 points. Trump also specifically quoted Latino voters at the New Mexico rally. This, of course, comes after the huge controversy over comedian Tony Hinchcliffe calling Puerto Rico a floating island of garbage at Trump's rally in New York's Madison Square Garden last weekend. Trump said, first of all, Hispanics love Trump. They are a lot smarter than the person running for president on the Democratic side. Trump had earlier claimed that his New York rally, where a lot of racist and vulgar remarks had been made by his supporters, was an absolute love fest, and that he had done more for Puerto Ricans than any other president. But will the damage control help? Many Puerto Ricans have said the insults hurled at them at the Trump rally will not be forgotten. Not only that, scores of Latino celebrities, including Beyonce and Jennifer Lopez, have recently come out and endorsed Kamala Harris. In fact, on Thursday, Jennifer Lopez proudly invoked her Puerto Rican heritage and told a crowd of Kamala Harris supporters in Las Vegas that they should embrace their emotions when voting. The singer, drawing on her own experiences in cultural heritage, called on voters to act with their ballot, telling them that the powerful people in the United States love it when you do nothing. Lopez also encouraged the audience to be scared and outraged and said she likes Hollywood endings when the good girl wins. And fact is, Trump hasn't really ended his anti-immigrant inflammatory rhetoric. During a rally in Nevada, Trump told his supporters, not for the first time, that the United States is an occupied country, and promised voters that the 5th November would mark Liberation Day for the nation. Meanwhile, Kamala Harris has said Donald Trump's comment that he would protect women, whether the women like it or not, showed that the Republican presidential nominee does not understand women's agency, their authority, their right and their ability to make decisions about their own lives, including their own bodies. Kamala Harris said, "I think it's offensive to everybody." Trump had appointed 3 of the justices to the US Supreme Court, who formed the conservative majority that overturned federal abortion rights. Trump has been boasting at public events and in social media posts that he would protect women and make sure they would not be thinking about abortion. Trump and Republicans have struggled with how to talk about abortion rights as women across the US face abortion restrictions that have gone far beyond the ability to end an unwanted pregnancy. Meanwhile, targeting another demographic ahead of the election, Trump has condemned violence against Hindus at a time when there has been widespread outrage over the attacks on minorities in Bangladesh. Since former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina was ousted, Trump said, "I strongly condemn the barbaric violence against Hindus, Christians and other minorities who are getting attacked and looted by mobs in Bangladesh, which remains in a total state of chaos." He added, "It would have never happened on my watch. Kamala and Joe have ignored Hindus across the world and in America." Trump vowed to protect Hindu Americans against the anti-religion agenda of the radical left, as he put it. He said, "We will fight for your freedom. Under my administration, we will also strengthen our great partnership with India and my good friend Prime Minister Modi." Trump made these remarks about Hindus in his Diwali message. Indian Americans are an increasingly prosperous and politically influential community in the United States. The Latinos, the Hispanics, the Indian Americans, the Arab Americans are all sizable and significant communities in the United States with varying degrees of influence. The question is, how are these demographics likely to vote in this particular election? Which presidential candidate has the edge vis-a-vis these communities? Or would it be a mistake to view them as monolithic entities that vote en masse for the same candidate and on the same issues?
With the U.S. presidential election now just days out, Vice President Kamala Harris and her opponent Donald Trump continued their respective campaign blitzes across battleground states on Thursday, with both candidates courting Hispanic voters in the Southwest. At Harris's first campaign stop of the day in Phoenix, Arizona, the Democrat blasted comments made by Trump a day earlier when he said, quote, "Whether the women like it or not, I've got to protect them. I'm going to protect them from migrants coming in."
Did everyone hear what he just said yesterday? He does not believe women should have the agency and authority to make decisions about their own bodies.
Reuters Ipsos polling last month found the race to be sharply divided along gender lines, with Harris leading among women by 12 percentage points. After a stop in Reno, Nevada, Harris closed the day with a rally in Las Vegas, where she courted Hispanic voters with the help of Latino celebrities, including pop star Jennifer Lopez. Lopez condemned Trump's recent rally in New York, where a comedian made racist jokes about Puerto Ricans and other minorities.
I promised myself I wouldn't get emotional, but you know what? You know what? We should be emotional. We should be upset. We should be scared and outraged. We should. Our pain matters. We matter.
Hispanic voters have traditionally been an area of strength for Democrats, but Trump has been gaining ground with the group. A series of Reuters Ipsos polls conducted this month showed that Trump had the support of 38% of registered Hispanic voters nationally. That's up from 32% at the same point 4 years ago. Meanwhile, Harris's share of Hispanic voters stood at 50%, compared with Democratic President Joe Biden's 54% in October 2020. At his first rally of the day in Albuquerque, New Mexico, a traditionally Democratic state, Trump argued he could win over the state's large Latino population.
They all said, "Don't come." I said, "Why?" "You can't win New Mexico." I said, "Look, your votes are rigged. We can win New Mexico. We can win New Mexico."
At his next stop in Henderson, Nevada, a state where Hispanics represent roughly a third of the population, Trump repeated well-worn anti-immigration talking points.
The United States is now an occupied country. Can you believe I have to say that? We're an occupied country. They're coming in, and they're by the thousands.
Trump wrapped his Thursday with a final stop in Glendale, Arizona, where he sat down for a live interview with former Fox News star Tucker Carlson. Opinion polls now show a historically close race between Harris and Trump, with the outcome of Tuesday's contest likely to be decided in 7 battleground states, including Nevada and Arizona.
Fighting against crooked Hillary Clinton, who's a smart woman, much smarter than Kamala, but doesn't lie as much. Hillary was a liar, a horrible scoundrel, but this one lies so much. And she's a low IQ individual. She doesn't even know she's lying, I'm telling you. This is not what you want for your president. That has nothing to do with me. This is not what you want. She's a very low IQ individual. She's dumb as a rock, and you can't have that. You can't have that. We love our country too much. You can't have it. We just went through 4 years of it. You can't have any more. A country can only take so much. When Biden got up with the red background, the pink background, and he looked like the devil, he looked so stupid, right? And he said, "We will stop MAGA. MAGA, we're going to..." I said, "Listen, you stupid bastard. MAGA means, because I think if you asked him what does it mean, he doesn't know. MAGA means make America great again. That's what MAGA means. So, for the first time, I never said it to anybody. I never really thought about it that much. But all of a sudden, it was down to like maybe 10 or 8 or 9 days, a few days ago, right? I said, you know, in 10 days, this will never happen again because I'm not running again.
I know who you are, and here's the thing about all of us. We know that when you know what you stand for, you know what to fight for. When you know what to fight for. And we know we have an opportunity in this election to turn the page on a decade of Donald Trump trying to keep us divided and afraid of each other. We're done with that. exhausted by it. We're done with that. We're done with it. Donald Trump still wants to get rid of the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare, and he has a powerful friend in Congress, the Speaker of the House, who recently said, if Trump wins, there will be, quote, no Obamacare, which would understand the meaning of that. It would throw millions of Americans off of their health insurance and take us back to the time which we remember when insurance companies could deny people with pre-existing conditions. Well, we are not going back. We are not going back. We're not going back.
All right, just days left before Election Day in the United States. Just how is this campaign shaping up? Where do the two candidates stand? Where is the United States headed? Let's discuss some of these questions with our guests. Joining me on Global Lens tonight is Seema Sirohi, senior journalist and author at Gateway House. She joins us live from Washington, D.C. Ambassador Ashok Sajanhar, former Indian diplomat, is also with us on the show. And in a moment, we are hoping to be joined by Pramit Pal Chaudhary, foreign policy and political analyst at the Eurasia Group. Seema Sirohi, let me begin with you. Welcome back to Global Lens and wish you a very happy Diwali. Let me ask you this question first and foremost. A lot of Trump's rhetoric, especially of the last couple of days, sounds eerily reminiscent of the bizarre and downright dangerous claims that he had made back in 2020 about a stolen election. Let's look at some of the things that he said. He claims if we could bring God down from heaven and he would be the vote counter, then we would win California, we would win New Mexico, we would win this state and that state. We've just got to keep the votes honest. Then he went on to claim that he actually won New Mexico in 2016-2020 when the fact is that he had actually lost both those states by 8 and 11 points in those two elections. Now he's actually saying that there is rigging of votes taking place in New Mexico, which is why he was warned not to go there. He was told he cannot win New Mexico. The question really is Trump once again trying to tell his supporters and Americans at large that this election is going to be a free and fair one only if I win? And if I end up on the losing side, oh well, then you know, it was all a fraud. It was then a rigged election. I think one of the biggest questions that's staring Americans in the face right now is, will America see a smooth and peaceful transfer of power? How do you view some of these comments that he has made?
He has been sowing these seeds for a while, since 2020 when he lost to Joe Biden. So he's laying the ground for, and a lot of doubt has already been created in the minds of voters. So yes, if he doesn't win, we have to prepare for hundreds of lawsuits in various states, especially where the margin of votes might be a few thousand votes. So yes, there is a lot of speculation and fear that if he loses, there will be problems, just like they were on January 6, 2021. Both parties have hired a lot of lawyers in various critical states, especially in Pennsylvania. So some rules have been changed where the Republicans have managed to, at local levels, at the county level, they have managed to put their people in, and they are there with, people say, analysts say that they're there for the very purpose of sort of hovering over and finding fault and asking for recounts or whatever have you. Now, 59 million Americans have already voted in the early voting system that they have. And there we just don't know who has the better turnout, the Democrats or the Republicans. But Donald Trump's main song has been to, the election was stolen once from me, which there is no basis for that. Most Republicans agree that he lost fair and square in 2020, just like he won fair and square in 2016, about which the Democrats had, created all sorts of doubts, saying he's not my president. So yes, until it's over, we just won't know what kind of turmoil there might be.
And I think that is a huge worry that a lot of Americans have right now, and that a lot of people around the world seem to have. In fact, we did a show just the other day quoting the Wall Street Journal and others in American media who talking about how Americans seem to be having a collective panic attack on the eve of this election. People have never been this nervous about the outcome of a presidential election. Many of them actually fear even violence could erupt regardless of who wins this election. Now, that is a very dangerous situation for the most powerful country in the world and the world's oldest democracy to put itself in. Let me take this to Ambassador Ashok Sajanhar. Ambassador Sajanhar, we know this is going to be a very tight race. Some are predicting this could be the closest presidential contest ever in American history. Seema Sirohi is telling us the two sides are already lawyering up in the key swing states such as Pennsylvania. While it's all very well, for them to keep their guard up vis-a-vis the swing states, but all the rhetoric that has already started coming from Trump and his supporters, that it would be a rigged election if he ends up on the losing side. Now, there are just way too many people who are saying right now, not again. How should we read these comments? Is Trump laying the ground to cry foul all over again if he actually does lose? And what would that mean for the United States of America?
Yeah, thank you very much, Neha. And possibly you could also ask what that would mean for the world.
For the world,
because,
yes.
Because, whichever candidate wins, whichever party wins, of course, as far as their approach to different challenges, different problems around the world, that is quite different, and how they are going to respond to that. So I think, normally we have seen around the world, even in our own country, that a party or an individual who is afraid of losing, they are the ones who always try to prepare such a ground. Of course, it would appear that, since the race is so very tight, of course, on, at the national level, Kamala Harris might be seen to be leading by a few points as compared to Donald Trump. But as far as the swing states, the 7 swing states are concerned, there it appears to be, the race appears to be very, very tight. And irrespective of, what is the advantage that Kamala Harris might have over Donald Trump in other states, but, that will hardly make a difference, because ultimately it will come down to, these 7 battleground states by and large, unless there are, some absolute, unanticipated results coming out of some of the other states. But as, both the polls that have come out and also as past results seem to have indicated that the other states, 43 states, are going to be moving in a direction that they are expected to move. And in that context, they are the red states and the blue states will deliver in the manner in which they are expected to. But as far as these 7 battleground states are concerned, there is very little difference, if at all, between between the two contestants. The 3 states, the Pennsylvania, state of Pennsylvania, Georgia, and I think it is also North Carolina. They seem to be in favor of Donald Trump, and one of the others seems to be in favor of Kamala Harris. But whatever the advantages, they also seem to be within the margin of error. They seem to be leads seem to be around 1% or 2%, which is well within the margin of error. So you can't really say. So possibly what Mr. Trump is doing is that he's preparing the ground that if he were not to win fair and square, then he is going to unleash this whole his supporters on what he had done last time on 6th of January 2021, as you referred to that also. And so I think the whole country seems to be on tenterhooks. It, I think, has been on tenterhooks for quite some time, ever since this whole election process started. And because this is the message that Donald Trump has been giving out, that if I win, I win. If I am seen not to win, if I'm seen not to lose, I will not accept that results. And you mentioned about how there are these teams of lawyers that have been marshaled by both the sides, meaning it's the good playground for lawyers, as far as we all know, as far as the United States is concerned. For anything, the lawyers will jump into the fray and will continue the whole process. So I'm not surprised at all that they are marshalling all their assets, all the resources, legal assets, to challenge the results one way or the other. So we'll really have to, while the voting goes on, while we'll continue to talk about what are the issues involved, whether it is immigration, whether it's abortion, whether it's women, whether it's Hispanics, as you mentioned earlier. But I think this will be a sort of a Damocles sword hanging over this whole process as to how the different parties and the different candidates are going to accept and acknowledge what is the outcome on the 5th of November.
Well, a lot is riding on this election. Pramit Pal Chaudhary is also with us. Pramit, many media outlets in the US have reported of late how Americans are extraordinarily nervous ahead of election day. Many have said this does not feel like a regular election. In the past, we felt that things would be okay regardless of the outcome. This time around, it doesn't feel like a regular democratic exercise. It feels like a collective nationwide panic attack. Many seem to be worried that this election could end up causing permanent damage to American democracy. Now, some have even joked that they're counting on marijuana actually to deal with their pre-election angst. The question is that when Donald Trump makes statements such as, if God were to come down from heaven, of course I would be the winner, they are already rigging votes, they are committing fraud, this is going to do nothing to soothe people's angst. If anything, it's only going to reinforce some of the worst fears that Americans have on the eve of this very crucial election.
Well, I don't think Trump is trying to ease fears. I don't think anybody has that interest. I don't see the benefit for them politically. For both of them, as you've mentioned, this is going to go down to the electoral college system. It's not about popular vote. It's about the electoral college system, which means 2 or 3 states will make that call. So you're looking at potentially as little as, Biden won his election largely because of 40,000 votes. 40,000 votes decided that, not because of the popular vote. Again, it was because specific states swung into his camp because of small margins, 5 or 6,000 votes under the electoral college system. We are going to see a similar situation this year. Some analysts have already said as little as 100,000 voters will decide this election. If you're down to such tiny numbers, in which bringing a crucial state like, let's say, Michigan or Pennsylvania is maybe 5 or 6,000 vote difference, both sides will almost certainly contest the results. Both sides will seek some sort of judicial intervention if they feel that there is even the slightest chance that they can get some of those votes overturned. So it's not just even a question of Trump. This is going to be, because it's a close election and because the American electoral college system ends up putting an enormous amount of, should we say, stress on 2 or 3 states in the election results. This is going to be contested no matter what happens, if it's close. On the other hand, if either of them has a wave in which, let's say, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, in particular, the 3 largest, or Georgia, the three or 4 largest swing states, go all in one direction, then there's really not that much to contest. But the assumption is that that's not going to happen. And the problem is that nobody knows for certain, because American polling is now as bad as Indian polling. In both the last 2 elections, the polling was unable to predict the winner. It deeply underestimated, especially Trump support. Biden won in the end, for example, in the last election, but he won with half the vote percentage that the polls had predicted. Some states, and one of them, for example, a swing state, Wisconsin, Trump polled 9 percentage points higher than the polling average the surveys had predicted. If you're at that level of error, then the polls mean absolutely nothing. You might as well sit down and flip a coin. So not surprisingly, nobody's quite certain what the numbers indicate. Nobody's quite certain who is going to win. And the swing states in particular, where 10,000 votes is going to make, or 5,000 votes, size of an Indian wedding, is going to make the difference. You are going to see contestation. That is inevitable. It's not helped by the fact that in America, unlike India, which has a centralized electoral commission, it is the states. Each state runs its own election structure, and a lot of them are very shoddy. They do not use electronic voting machines. They use paper. They have very shoddy or inefficient systems of counting. For example, roughly 40 to 50% of the ballots have already been cast through the mailing system. Unfortunately, Pennsylvania has one of the worst methods of handling mail ballots. But it's a swing state. In fact, it may be the most important swing state. So mail ballots are going to be important, but it is a state that has a very poor record of handling them sensibly. So inevitably, you're going to have contestation given this shoddy infrastructure, given the sheer closeness of the election, and given the nature of the electoral college system where 2 or 3 states will make the call.
All right. Fact of the matter is that nobody is willing to really predict a winner at this point in time. It is expected to be extremely close. Even the famous polling guru Nate Silver has said, I cannot predict a winner, but my gut says it is going to be Donald Trump. The question really is, if Donald Trump is declared the loser, will he refuse to accept the verdict of the people, and how far is he willing to go this time if he does choose to contest the verdict? All right, I need to take a quick break here on Global Lens. On the other side, we're going to discuss how different demographics across the United States are likely or expected to vote in this particular election. For instance, the Latinos, a sizable voting population, and a community that Trump and his supporters seem to have deeply offended in the last few days. More on that on the other side of this quick break.
For the very first time in our investigation, we unmasked the killer of Ravindra Matre.
In 5G, we have to stand with the world, and in 6G, we have to lead the world.
Winning a Grammy was an absolutely surreal experience.
Cooking is an act of law. The first act of law we receive from our mothers in the families.
Modern Indian food is all about contemporary and innovative approach to traditional Indian cooking.
Representation it's also important, no?
I want to wear this white coat every day and then be a chef.
There are stories. If the name of whiskey is Indri, then there is a whole story behind that.
Cooking food is like a therapy, and eating one is like a pleasure I can give it to myself. With Lounge Nights, I'm on a journey to celebrate and recognize the best food and nightlife establishments in various cities across India.
Radical presents Lounge Nights every Saturday and Sunday only on Newsline Live.
Welcome back. You're watching Global Lens on Newsline Live with me, Neha Khanna, and we're discussing the US presidential election, which is now just 4 days away. Let me go back to Seema Sirohi at this point. Seema, I want to look at specific demographics in this segment. The Latinos, the Hispanics, the Indian Americans, the Arab Americans. Let's first talk about the Latinos. Now, we all know that at the Madison Square Garden rally that was addressed by Trump, one of his supporters, a comedian, made some very distasteful remarks about the Puerto Ricans, calling the island a floating island of garbage. While Trump has attempted some sort of damage control since then, saying Hispanics love me, I have done more for Puerto Rico than any other president, fact of the matter is that his anti-immigrant stance is nothing new. Even this week he said, we are an occupied country, the United States. And since then, we've also seen many Puerto Ricans coming out and saying, we will not forget how they're talking about us. Jennifer Lopez gets emotional, at a Kamala Harris rally and says, our pain matters. The question is, how do you believe the Latinos are looking at this election, Trump versus Harris? Do you believe that given the constant anti-immigrant rhetoric and xenophobia that Trump keeps whipping up, there's a very good chance of this community going with Kamala Harris? Or would it be incorrect to look at them as a monolithic entity that votes en masse?
See, it's not so black and white. There are issues that Trump has raised that are working with Latinos, with Blacks, even with Indian Americans. One of them being illegal immigration. So many Hispanic workers are not happy with what happened over the last 3.5 years when there was chaos at the southern border and millions came in. Now, the most sober data point is that there are about 8 to 9 illegal people who have come in. So the Hispanics have that also on their mind. They don't like this flood of people coming in because, after all, ultimately it's about the jobs, right? So a section of the male vote among the Latinos, among the Blacks, interestingly, among Indian Americans under the age of 40, has kind of shifted to Trump. Now, the remark that was made at the Madison Square Garden rally, it was offensive, no doubt. But then President Biden said something in a Zoom call that kind of implied that all of Trump's supporters are garbage. Now, he didn't mean to say that. I think he was referring to that one comedian who made the remark calling Puerto Rico a floating island of garbage. So, but Trump quickly jumped on it and appeared as a garbage man the next day, driving a garbage truck, etc. So it was great political theater. And I think, it motivates his base. And there is this sense that the Republicans have become the party of the working class over the last few years, while the Democrats have become the party of the elites of the two, coasts, the East Coast and the West Coast. And that is the most interesting phenomenon for me, that how the Democrats are no longer the working class party. The unions, the Teamsters Union, has not endorsed a candidate this time. So everything is in a flux, and it will be marginal votes. I don't think this one comment is going to make the Latinos not vote for Trump who were already going to vote for Trump, because I think the economy trumps, so to say, other concerns.
It's very interesting. I want to take this to Ambassador Sajjanar. Ambassador Sajjanar, Seema Sirohi says that a lot of men under the age of 40 amongst the Hispanics, the Latinos, even amongst Indian Americans seem to have shifted to Donald Trump. Do you agree with that assessment? What is making these men, move in favor of Donald Trump? Let's focus for a moment on the Indian American community. Now, we know this is an increasingly prosperous community. They're also increasingly influential politically. I'm not sure how much the Indian American vote matters in determining the outcome of this election, but where do you think they really stand? Of course, it is no coincidence that on the eve of election day, Trump has suddenly found his love for Hindus, in Bangladesh and across the United States of America. No prizes for guessing. He is trying to woo the Indian American community.
Yeah, thank you for those comments, Neha. You are very right. And I think we have seen, like as far as the Latinos are concerned, as far as the Hispanics are concerned, Indian Americans are concerned, by and large, they are heterogeneous communities. They don't vote en bloc, all together. They don't vote. They have their own interests. They have their own concerns. But still, we have seen out of these, the majority, a significant majority of them have been with the Democrats traditionally. Even as far as the Indian Americans are concerned, they have been with the Democrats, through history, if we see. But of late, we have seen that slowly, some of them have been moving towards the Republicans. Maybe it is, the fact that we saw that when Trump was the president, in terms of the bonhomie, in terms of the rapport and the camaraderie that was that existed between Donald Trump and Prime Minister Modi, and he's been making positive references to Prime Minister Modi. So, and Prime Minister Modi, of course, continues to be extremely popular in the United States. So people who are there, Indian Americans, they would be looking more favorably towards Trump. And they would also be looking at, whatever is happening as far as the United States is concerned, whether it is, this whole issue of Guru Patwant Singh Pannu and, some of the other issues, the support to the, as a member of the Five Eyes to Canada on the assassination of Hardeep Singh Nijjar there. I think they would be feeling that if Trump was there, these sort of issues would definitely never come up between the two sides. And there have been, some of the other aspects also. Of course, there have been there in the past also this Commission for Freedom of Religion, Practice of Religion, etc. They have been in the past also. I remember when I was there, the approach of this particular commission used to be exactly the same, and they used to identify India as as a country of priority and which needed to be kept under watch or something. But I think there is a feeling as far as the Indian Americans are concerned that these issues would definitely not have cropped up. And while of course we had the problem on the issue of trade, Harley-Davidson, penal duties on aluminium and steel from India, removal from GSP, etc. But maybe that has not been projected so much. And today what you mentioned about what he's said about Hindus, of course, that is an attempt to reach out to the Hindu American community and the large numbers there. And I'm sure it's going to have some sort of an impact. But ultimately, I think we have to see, basically there are two segments that are still up for grabs. Because, even at the national level, we see 47, 48% for the two candidates, whichever way you want to put it. And there are about 5% which are undecided voters. So, all that these candidates are trying to do is trying to reach out to those undecided voters. Whatever is committed with them. But it is this 5%. And second is that these seats in the battleground states, the swing states, particularly the largest one, Pennsylvania with 19, and then I think Georgia and North Carolina with 16 electoral votes. So these are the important ones where the final decision will be, that will come out. Of course, we are going by this presumption that whatever the polls and the surveys seem to indicate that this will be followed by and large. But I tend to agree that, jobs are very important for people. I have spoken to some people, even within the same family. The young girls and boys might be voting for Democrats, but their parents, 40, 50 years old, they have benefited from the policies of Donald Trump as far as their businesses are concerned. And secondly, as far as those who have legally settled in the United States, they might be, Latinos, Hispanics, Arab
They
Americans.
would want to see a crackdown on illegal immigrants.
Yeah, they don't want this increased sort of, numbers that have been coming over the last 3.5
I think there is near unanimity on that is something that a lot of Americans would actually want to see. And Trump has promised a massive crackdown on illegal immigrants. But as we wrap up this conversation, Pramit Pal Chaudhary, since we're looking at specific demographics, what do you make of the remarks that Donald Trump has made saying, I will protect Hindu Americans, we will fight for your freedom, we will strengthen our great partnership with India and my good friend Prime Minister Modi. How significant do you think is the support of the Indian American community? Does Trump seem to have it? And also, let's talk about the Arab Americans. Under normal circumstances, you would think they would definitely not vote Trump. But there is a lot of anger currently with the Biden administration, of which Kamala Harris is an integral part, over the ongoing war in Gaza.
What's noticeable about ethnic voting in America, right, in this election, is that Trump is doing much better than would be expected. He's not getting a majority of them, but so, for example, in Latino votes, Biden beat Trump by almost 35, 36 percentage points. Right now, Kamala Harris, if the polls are correct, is only leading Trump about 15 to 16 percentage points. In other words, he has been able to halve the support that she had among Latino voters. Now, he may have made comments about Puerto Ricans, but keep in mind the Latino vote is not united. Puerto Ricans, that's basically four big groups: Puerto Ricans, Mexicans, Central Americans, and Cubans. Cubans vote Republican en masse. Puerto Ricans vote Democrat en masse. It's the Mexicans, about 50% of the vote, and the Central Americans, about 25, who are the core swinging vote within the Latin Americans. They don't necessarily care about the Puerto Ricans. So Trump, actually, by attacking the Puerto Ricans, is actually attacking one of the demographics that will never vote for him. So he's not particularly in a bad position, but nonetheless, he has tried to compensate. Indian Americans in the past have voted 70 to 75% in favor of Democrats. They're now down to about 60% pro Kamala Harris, despite the fact that she's half Indian. But about 50% of their money, remember, they are the richest ethnic group in the country per capita. 50% of the money seems to be going Republican. So for Modi, for Trump, it makes perfect sense to woo them. And they are now large enough. There are about 5 million of them. Compared, for example, to Arab Americans, who, depending on how you define them, is probably just about 1.5 million to 2 million. In other words, Indian Americans are now twice the size of Arab Americans. So if he can get even a 5 to 10% swing among them, plus get more of their money to be diverted in his direction, they are significant. Pennsylvania, for example, Indian Americans number almost 200,000. They dwarf the Arab American population. Michigan, on the other hand, Arab Americans are much larger. So these are now very important constituencies. If you're going to win Pennsylvania, where you could be winning by as little as 10 or 20,000 votes, 200,000 Indian Americans is a sizable and worthwhile target. What is interesting is that even among Black Americans, Trump is polling about 10 percentage points better than he did against Biden. And this continues to be a problem. I think Seema Sirohi correctly pointed out that class issues are now starting to intervene and cut across ethnic and even to some degree gender divides in the United States. Increasingly, working class Blacks, young Black Americans are basically saying we're with Trump, partly because of misogyny. They don't necessarily like a female candidate, but partly because our view is, yeah, Trump is racist. So what? All white guys are racist. At least he's honest about it. But he can give me economic sense, and I don't want a female as a president. And Kamala Harris doesn't vibe with me. So you're seeing this interesting game where it's not so much as winning the entire ethnic vote in each case. It's about a 10 to 20% swing within the ethnic votes that Trump can play for. And as I said, in a really tight election where less than 100,000 votes are going to make the decision who wins, this is hugely decisive. Latin Americans are the single largest ethnic minority in the country. Even Black Americans, who are the number two, are about 12% of the vote. And now it's close enough that even Indian Americans, 4 to 5 million of them, very small by American standards, could be decisive.
Well, that is quite interesting. Which way are they going to vote? Now remains the million-dollar question. They may not vote en masse, but at the end of the day, since this is expected to be a very close election, every vote counts, and it's all going to boil down to the swing states. Well, this is an election we will continue to track very, very closely here on Global Lens. On that note, Seema Sirohi, Ambassador Sajjan Har and Pramit Pal Chaudhary, thank you so much for joining me on Global Lens tonight and sharing your perspective with us on the biggest global story at the moment. All right, let's now turn our attention from the US elections to India-China ties and the line of actual control. The Indian Army resumed patrolling in Demchok in eastern Ladakh today, following the recent disengagement of Indian and Chinese troops at key friction points in the region. This development is part of an effort to restore stability along the line of actual control, with patrolling in the Depsang area also expected to begin soon. Indian and Chinese forces recently completed their disengagement at two significant points in eastern Ladakh, Demchok and the Depsang Plains. These areas have been sources of tension since the standoff that began in April 2020. The phased disengagement process concluded earlier this week, marking a positive step in India-China ties. After finalizing the disengagement on Wednesday, troops from both sides observed the Diwali holiday together on Thursday by exchanging sweets at several border locations, signaling a renewed effort to foster goodwill. The recent agreement on disengagement and resumption of patrols represents a milestone in de-escalating the border standoff, which has strained relations between the two countries since the deadly clashes in the Galwan Valley in June 2020. Indian Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri confirmed last week that the breakthrough was the result of several weeks of diplomatic negotiations, highlighting the commitment of the two countries to address outstanding issues through dialogue. The deal includes provisions for coordinated patrols by Indian and Chinese forces, which will allow each side to inform the other of patrol schedules to avoid further conflicts. The disengagement is expected to restore the pre-2020 patrolling norms, bringing back a sense of routine and order along the LAC. Ground commanders from both sides will work together to decide on the modalities of patrol schedules and protocols. Army officials say additional talks will continue at the local commander level, with plans to ease restrictions along the border progressively. Meanwhile, Parliamentary Affairs Minister Kiran Rijiju celebrated Diwali with Indian Army soldiers at Bamla Pass in Arunachal Pradesh, where he praised India's border development while comparing it to that of the Chinese counterparts. Rijiju posted on social media, "After talking to Chinese soldiers and seeing the infrastructure, everyone will be proud of India's border development." And finally, Spain is reeling from its worst flooding in decades after a year's worth of rain fell in just hours this week in the country's southern and eastern regions. The number of people who have died in the Valencia region has risen to 202. It brings the total number of people killed to 205. Dozens still remain missing. There's torrential rain in the region of Huelva with a red rain warning in place and people being told to stay at home. The city of Cartaya has already seen around 2 months worth of rain in just 10 hours. The mayor of Shiva in eastern Spain says many more may be found dead because of the number of car crashes that have occurred due to the flooding. The storm flooded towns and roads, caused rivers to burst their banks and left thousands without power or running water.
Rescue teams searched for the missing in Spain on Thursday, after scores of people were killed in the country's worst flood-related disaster in modern history. A Spanish government minister said dozens and dozens of people were still unaccounted for after a year's worth of rain fell in 8 hours in parts of the Valencia region on Tuesday. In the town of Paiporta, the epicenter of the disaster, people walked through mangled cars and debris as residents tried to clear the streets. Isabel Seredia says she was lucky to survive. The water was already up to here, to the neck, she said. If it wasn't for my neighbors, I wouldn't be telling this story. In Valencia, this resident says warnings came too late and that deaths could have been avoided. Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez urged people in flooded areas to stay at home due to the threat of more stormy weather. He said the government will keep providing resources to search for missing people as long as necessary. Opposition politicians accused the central government of acting too slowly to warn residents and send in rescue teams. That prompted the Interior Ministry to say regional authorities were responsible for civil protection measures. Spain's transport minister said about 50 miles of roads in the eastern region were seriously damaged or impassable, some blocked by cars containing dead bodies. Research group Climate Central said in a report on Thursday that a low-pressure system behind Spain's floods had tapped into an atmospheric river carrying excess moisture from the unusually warm tropical Atlantic. Meteorologists say human-driven climate change is making such extreme weather events more frequent and destructive.
Catastrophic floods, the worst that Spain has seen in decades. Well, that's all the time we have on the Friday edition of Global Lens. Thanks so much for watching. Do join us again at the same time on Monday. Bye for now.
How do you fulfill that promise? Because ultimately expectations have to be met. If you look at the political landscape, is it really changing for women? And what is the inability of the forces that dead bodies surface but not the living people?
Hello.
If your money is fraudulently taken by somebody or a cyber crime takes place with you,
क्या हम कृष्णा दास गुप्ता जी से बात कर रहे हैं?
and you report it to the bank within 3 days of the crime, the bank is liable to pay you 100%. This is clear-cut guidelines.
मैं डिपार्टमेंट से बात कर रहा हूँ.
If you report it within 7 days, the bank is liable to pay you 50%. And if you report it in 21 days, I think 25% or something.
और हमने ये देखा है कि आपके आधार कार्ड से एक सिम रजिस्टर्ड हुआ है यहाँ.
If the person gives information within the span of 3 to 4 hours, 100% recovery can be done. I personally have seen a lot of cases where 100% recovery has been done.
आपका सिम यूज हुआ है, इलीगल एक्टिविटीज हुई हैं उस सिम से. Oh my God. Madam, you are also involved in the Naresh Goyal money laundering case.
For the very first time in our investigation, we unmasked the killer of Ravindra Matre.
In 5G, we have to stand with the world, and in 6G, we have to lead the world.
Winning a Grammy was an absolutely surreal experience.
This is News 9 Live, India's only digital exclusive live stream. For the early adopters, bringing you the news 24/7. For the smart audiences on the smartest TVs. News 9 Live. Stream now on your smart TVs.
Cooking is an act of law. The first act of law we receive from our mothers in the families.
Modern Indian food is all about contemporary and innovative approach to traditional Indian cooking.
Representation it's also important, no?
I want to wear this white coat every day and then be a chef.
There are stories. If the name of whiskey is Indri, then there is a whole story behind that.
Cooking food is like a therapy, and eating one is like a pleasure I can give it to myself. With Lounge Nights, I'm on a journey to celebrate and recognize the best food and nightlife establishments in various cities across India.
Radical presents Lounge Nights. Every Saturday and Sunday, only on News 9 Live. This is News 9 Live, India's only digital exclusive live stream. For the early adopters, bringing you the news 24/7. For the smart audiences on the smartest TVs. News 9 Live. Stream now on your smart TVs.
Hello and welcome to the News 9 Plus show on the world's first news and current affairs OTT platform, News 9 Plus. 1984 is a year synonymous with dystopia. That's because it's the title of George Orwell's novel that he wrote in 1949, where he painted a very grim picture of the future. But for India, 1984 is a very real and dark chapter in our history. For Indians, 1984 is not science fiction, it is reality. It was a year of extreme violence where thousands of people were killed. A prime minister was assassinated, and riots took place across the country which targeted India's Sikh minority. Now, what happened in India 40 years ago continues to resonate today. It began with Operation Blue Star in June 1984. Now, Blue Star was an Indian military operation to evict Jarnail Singh Bhindranwale from the Golden Temple. Bhindranwale was killed, but the temple was seriously damaged, severely damaged in fact. Hundreds of people died in that operation. And on the 31st of October 1984, India's then Prime Minister Indira Gandhi was shot dead in her residence by her Sikh bodyguards. Now, thousands of Sikhs were killed and their properties looted on a large scale after her assassination. And all of this happened because of Operation Blue Star. But what unfolded in Amritsar in June 1984? Could Operation Blue Star have been avoided? Why did it take 34 years for the first high-profile conviction in the 1984 anti-Sikh riots? The arrest of Congress leader Sajjan Kumar. He was one of the main leaders accused of participating in the 1984 violence. It took 40 years to start the case against another minister, Jagdish Tytler. Was there an attempt to cover up the killings of Sikhs by the government? Now, News 9 Plus has covered this year and its bloody chapters in very great detail through a special series of 4 documentaries. Watch documentary number 1, First Person, Operation Blue Star, where we interviewed Satish Jacob, who was then with the BBC. He had a ringside view of Operation Blue Star. Then we have a documentary on Operation Sundown, a special forces operation to extract Bhindranwale from the vicinity of the Golden Temple. This operation was rejected by the government, who approved the Operation Blue Star, the military operation. We've got exclusive details on this classified operation 40 years ago. And finally, why has it taken so long for the law to catch up with Jagdish Tytler, one of the accused in the 1984 riots? We've got a documentary on that. And finally, Delhi Files, our interview with Manoj Mitta, a journalist who's covered the anti-Sikh riots in very great detail. And he explains to us whether the government tried to cover up the 1984 riots. Do watch these documentaries for an exclusive perspective on the incidents 40 years ago.
Punjab has now been declared a dangerously disturbed area, and security forces have been given authority to shoot on sight.
Operation Blue Star was the finale of the story of Golden Temple and Amritsar. The idea was that they will go inside and they will overpower the people inside without a serious battle. What a great tragedy it was for the country. It was like as if India will break up. The Sikhs will rebel, and God forbid what will happen. Hi, I am Satish Jacob, a journalist from BBC. I witnessed Operation Blue Star. Once I made the mistake of asking Bhindranwale, I used to call him Santji. I said, Santji, why do you want a separate state of Khalistan? And he looked at me and he said, who told you that I want a separate state of Khalistan? How dare you say that? We don't want to leave India, but we want for Punjab, we want a state of our own, where we can rule as we like. He was not a separatist. I mean, he really rebuked me when I said that you want separate state. He said, no, we want Punjab, it will be given to us and we will govern it as we like. I first met him in the Golden Temple on the roof of the Langar building, and he used to have his darbar there. Anybody could go and meet him there. And he was not doing any bhajan, kirtan, nothing. He just sit there like Maharaja Ranjit Singh. But he was very serious. You couldn't afford to joke with him. He used to lose his temper very, very quickly. Everybody was in awe. I could not say that Bhindranwale was a religious person, although he went to one of the most prestigious Sikh religious education institute called Damdami Taksal. But when he came into the limelight, Bhindranwale, people just knew him as a very dangerous terrorist. But when I came to know him, unfortunately, we became very good friends and I started liking him because he had a terrific sense of humor. On my later trips, I went inside and I noticed that there were guns were placed in this place or that place. And so I just casually asked, what these guns are doing here? And they said, koi nahi ji, hamare ek military de bande hain the, Shabik Singh. So I said, oh, Shabik Singh is here. So he said, tusi jante ho? I said, I know him. What happened was, the Indian Army, they raised a special force for security and that. He was in charge of that battalion. They did